I like peanut butter. I like peanut butter. Peanut butter. I like peanut butter. You're listening to CreepGeeks Podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/CheapGeek. So it begins again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast. This is episode number 105.
Carolina paranormal peoples, Kokogi, 7-foot-tall insect, and UFO legacy continues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it begins again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast. I'm Greg.
I'm Omi.
We are your hosts of
Yep.
the CreepGeeks Podcast. This is episode number 105, and it begins again. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about this time. As we do every time, we talk about things we find to be interesting. We are broadcasting from our CreepGeeks Bunker Studio in the mountains of western North Carolina, broadcasting paranormal news and fun stories and things we think to be interesting.
Yeah.
So, just in case you were wondering, what are we?
We are an offbeat news podcast that takes a lighthearted approach to the strange, the stupid, paranormal, and tech topics circulating the web.
That's right. So whatever we find to be interesting is what we talk about.
And we are broadcasting straight from an underground bunker in western North Carolina.
That's right. We're the only podcast in western North Carolina.
That's not true.
No, that's not true.
That's not true at all.
That's not true at all.
Gosh.
So, people are like, well, that's not true.
We're the only podcast with a bunker, maybe.
That's not true.
I'm sure. Watch, we're going to open Google.
Somebody probably, they got a bunker somewhere. They have a hollowed out stump with a lid on it, and they just pop it open like Hogan's Hero style, flip out an antenna, and broadcast to the world.
Yeah.
Because you can do that in western North Carolina. Yeah. So you can give us a call at the podcast. The phone number is 1-575-208-4025.
And that is a free, toll-free number. Area code Roswell, New Mexico, if you're interested. Just call, leave us a message, share your spooky story, weird experience, paranormal, or if you just want to call the show and say hi, do that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's free.
Yeah, we may play your message on the show or your
Free.
call.
Yes.
And if you do get played on the show, we will send you a sticker.
Free.
Would you stop?
That's right. So you can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can watch us and hear us on YouTube when we do our podcast live. We do a live stream. We used to do that live stream every Sunday, but we moved from New Mexico and found that the internet here is garbage.
It's
That's French for garbage. So we have to kind of figure it out. But anyway, we're probably going to wind up doing a live stream every month, maybe twice a month. Don't know just yet. But when we do, if you are subscribed to us on the YouTube and you click the bell for the notifications, you will know when we do a live podcast.
Ooh.
Yes.
And
because it doesn't cost anything because it's free. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And at any time, you can always find us on creepgeeks.com. That's where we list our podcast episodes as well as important stuff and announcements.
Yes.
And you can always find us everywhere on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagrams, everything.
Yep. We have a we have a CreepGeeks Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to look for CreepGeek. You can find that. It's on Facebook. Shocking, right? And if you're listening to us, the audio podcast, very much appreciated. It's iTunes, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify. We are on all of those. So you can find us and listen to us any way you want.
Yeah. And be sure, whatever platform you do listen to us on, you give us a rating. Those ratings help us grow and become more visible to potential people who would also want to listen to us.
That's right. Only the finest quality 3 to 5 star reviews.
And we will leave a link to the iTunes review page in the show notes for the podcast.
Yes. So wherever you listen to us on, if you want to do a review, that is fantastic and very much appreciated. If you don't, that's okay too. We still love you, but we'd like you to review if you can. But if you don't, that's okay too. But you know what? It really helps us if you want to. So
thank you.
You do. It's all right. So it's all good. So you can totally get a hold of us if you'd like. Follow us.
Oh, and if you'd like to email us instead of call us, you can do that too. It's going to be contact@creepgeeks.com.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, there you go. That's all the show we have for you today.
Not true.
That is not true.
Do you want to share your interesting factoid first?
No.
Why? Okay.
Because I figured you would do yours first, and then since mine's better.
Well, mine.
Yeah.
You can't beat UFOs.
Yes, you can.
Psh, okay. So I found out this week that Dorset, a little place in the Englands.
You mean the UK?
Yes.
I'm winning already.
Shut up. Dorset claims to be. They claim the first ever recorded UFO sighting, which is interesting. I had no idea that they claim the very first one. But supposedly, they documented a UFO sighting happening in their little village of Fleet, which is a village in West Dorset. Now, this sighting actually occurred in 1733 by somebody named James Cracker. And I was like, there's no way, because, I mean, people have been recording, UFO sightings or reporting strange things in the sky, but it turns out the term UFO really didn't happen until the 50s. This guy, his sighting, which I'm trying to get to load, was documented not just by him, but by, I guess, the village people. Well, not
the village people. It's like, young man, can you look in the sky? I said, young man.
So, yeah.
Oh, man, I should have some. Hold on. I got some village people music. There you go. So this is in the 30s?
1733.
Good Lord of the dance.
Yeah.
That's about 100 years after Jamestown.
Wow. You did some math there.
Virginia. Colonial. Very, very nice. Are you throwing your arms up in despair from the amazingly blistering fast internet we have?
Yes.
Nice. Sweet. So, is it my turn?
Yes, it's your turn.
Okay, so my interesting random factoid, because when we do the podcast, we do like to do interesting random factoids when we have them, and this time we actually have 2. Last time we had 3. If you listen to us last podcast we had, we talked about important people being buried in weird things. Remember the coffee guy?
Oh, yeah.
And then the Pringles guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this time is similar, right? This one. No country is allowed to own the moon.
Well, that should be good.
Well, it should be. And I kind of put this in here because, China is doing a whole dark side of the moon exploration, so they're threatening to land on the dark side of the moon.
And I've actually seen some social media posts claiming that they're trying to take possession.
Well, the question is that are they trying to?
Yeah.
Well, according to this, the Outer Space Treaty, which is formally known as Treaty on Principles Governing the Activities of States in the Exploration and Use of Outer Space, including the Moon and other celestial bodies. I like Outer Space Treaty better. It's easier.
Yeah.
In 1967, the international treaty was basically binding the parties to use outer space for only peaceful purposes.
No.
And back then, the United States and the Soviet Union submitted draft treaties on the uses of space to the United Nations. And then they were reconciled, and a bunch of negotiations happened, and they were endorsed by the UN General Assembly on December 19th, 1966.
Oh.
Yep. And after that, they were opened for signature on January 27th, 1967. The treaty came into force on October 10th, 1967. Right?
Yeah.
So under the terms of this treaty, the parties are prohibited from placing nuclear arms or weapons of mass destruction in orbit, on the moon, or on other bodies in space. And nations can't claim sovereignty over the moon or other celestial bodies, and nations are responsible for their activities in space, are liable for any damage caused by objects launched into space from their territory, and are bound to assist astronauts in distress, and their space installations and vehicles shall be open on a reciprocal basis to representatives of other countries, and all parties agree to conduct outer space activities openly and in accordance with international law.
Oh, wow. That's kind of neat. Kind of reminds me of, I guess, some naval policies.
Yeah, sort of.
But what I didn't see in this was, whether or not China, it says the U.S., Soviet Union, UK and several other countries signed this treaty. It didn't say whether or not China had signed it.
Yes.
So I had to do a little bit of legwork on that and look. And I found only a couple sources that said China did eventually sign this treaty, but they signed it in 1983. So supposedly they have to abide by this treaty as well.
Yes.
As far as people posting on the internet that China is trying to take over the moon or claim sovereignty onto it, they're not supposed to.
I mean, they're not supposed to, but they certainly could. They could say, "We claim the moon," and I'm pretty sure that wouldn't fly very far.
No.
I mean, I don't know what would happen, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could see them staking the flag and say, "We claim the moon," and I can also see somebody else launching a drone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Little robot drone deal to go there and cut the pole with big scissors, cartoon style, snip, so the flag drops. I don't know. I'm kind of interested to see what's on the dark side of the moon and see exactly what they're trying to do up there. Because if you listen and have seen some of the YouTube videos and other weird stuff and just general weirdness that happens on the moon, there's supposed to be big bases over there.
Oh yeah, all those theories.
Yeah, it's entirely possible they may get up there and try to stake a claim and never to be seen or heard from again.
Oh.
Yeah. Or they might make friends with whoever's up there and come back and get us.
Don't even. That's not cool.
I mean, who knows? I mean, you know, there's a bunch of different theories. You know, it could be, you know, aliens are up there, or it's also there's like a whole splinter of Earth is up there somehow. Another
surfing space Nazis.
No, there's no such thing as surfing space Nazis.
I don't remember the name of the
movie. The movie was called Iron Sky.
Oh,
by
okay.
The way, and how dare you? That was a great movie.
Another one.
No, there's not. Turn it off your mic. No. Anyway, you just drove that right into the trash.
Yep.
Can. Garbage can. Oh, do you have any garbage can music we can play? Let's see. Yeah, you want to hear what the sound of Saturn sounds like? Saturn moon. This comes from space. Space.
Did you stop?
Lasagna. Anyway, you remember that when they took and did a time lapse and they recorded the electronic signals that come? Well,
Yeah.
Actually, they recorded the radiation that comes off of one of Saturn's moons, and then they translated it into sound.
Okay.
You remember? And this
Yeah.
is what it sounds like.
It's so creepy. And then the clicking that you can faintly hear. That messes me up the most.
It's like insects talking.
Oh. Which, if there are aliens, they'd probably be more aligned with, I guess, insects than humanoids.
Maybe. But speaking of insects,
Yeah.
found this in the news.
Oh.
And this is from cryptozoologynews.com. 7-foot tall insect was spotted in Illinois.
Really?
Yep.
That's kind of creepy.
Well, sure it is.
But
what?
I don't know. We've had those recent sightings of large cryptids in the news over the past few months. But it's usually been something typical, like the increase in Dogman and Mothman sightings, as well as Thunderbirds. This is completely away from the realm of the normal, I use that term loosely, the normal sightings.
Yeah.
So a 7-foot tall stick insect.
Yeah. You ever seen like those walking stick bugs?
Gosh, those things creep me out.
Can you imagine seeing one of those 7 feet tall?
No, I would just run inside. Mm-mm.
No.
So.
So there was this guy, an anonymous man. So he was driving home on the highway, and this is in Madison County, right?
Mm-hmm.
And close to St. Jacob, Illinois. And he said he was driving home on the highway, and the creature showed up last Wednesday at 3 a.m.
Oh, wow.
So this is recent. It's in the past 2 weeks. Right?
Yeah.
An object appeared in my headlights on the right side, crossing the highway looking like a giant walking stick with 4 legs. And he reported this to MUFON.
Oh.
And in case you ever need it, there is a MUFON link on our website. You can go to CreepGeeks.com. It's on the left-hand side if you need to submit something.
Cool.
But it said, his head turned as it ran and it looked at me just before going out of lighted view. And he provided a sketch of the reported sighting. And it basically looks like a stick with 4 sticks underneath it. Right?
Yeah.
And he said it was about 7 feet tall. Its length was probably about the same. Okay, so he said it was 7 feet tall and about 7 feet long.
Yeah.
It was red wood, and it moved in approximately 1 second or less across the whole lighted area of my headlights.
Yeah.
It had 4 legs and appeared to be slightly elevated off the ground. When it turned and looked at me, it had no face.
See, and that kind of creeps me out because I've shown a flashlight at something in a corner once, and it was a praying mantis. And if you shine a super bright light, it just almost seems faceless because it's so overexposed. So I'm kind of leaning.
Well, I like the
towards
picture he put. It says, head turned as it ran and looked at me before going out of lighted view. Freaked me out! Exclamation point. Now, the biggest insect in the world is supposed to be this giant white witch moth, which has a wingspan of almost a foot at 11.8 inches.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So, I don't know. But giant insects are of interest to cryptozoologists, as some believe, right, that these are part of the extinct genus as Meganura, which could still be alive. So this kind of goes into the something from the past, which somehow or another is still alive, kind of like thunderbirds and pterodactyls or petrosaurs.
Yeah.
All that stuff. So,
well, the interesting thing is, like, unlike some of those petrosaur or pterodactyl type sightings where it just seems to be minding its own business, just flying across a busy highway or something, this thing looked straight at him, and then
weird.
finished crossing the road. And if you go to the link, which we'll provide in the show notes about this article, you can actually see this time the witness provided a drawing and details, and it lends towards some credibility here. I feel this dude saw what he thinks he saw.
Yeah.
There are times where we've read accounts in the past, I'm like, no. But and before anybody knocks his drawing, I will say, if I have an experience and I don't have a camera on me, I'll be drawing just as well as that, you know?
Yeah.
But it also gets on my creepy side because I have a thing about large insects. They already creep me out, especially praying mantis and anything along that species. So, yeah.
Well, according to this theory, comes from Gautier Chappelle and Leonard S. Peck from 1999. They say giant insects could not survive today's decreased oxygen levels.
No.
The period in which they would have come from being a supergiant bug, the Carboniferous period, the oxygen level was about 35% versus what we have now. So they say it's not possible. I say anything's possible, except for maybe wearing skis through a revolving door. That may not be possible, but I don't know, man. I mean, there's lots of weird stuff, and if this dude's seen it, more power to him. But I don't know what I would do if I seen something like that. That would be super freaky, man.
Yeah.
It's like big giant walking stick thing. Although I don't think they have. I don't know. Can they eat you?
Walking sticks?
Yeah. What do they eat?
They do eat other insects.
Like aphids and stuff?
Yeah, like aphids and ants and stuff. So if you were to blow one up to, I guess, 7 feet tall, it still wouldn't be able to eat you.
Is it because I'm fat?
No. It might be able to eat Pepper, though. So I'm a little alarmed.
Well, she's a little alarmed, too.
She is.
Well, there you go. Anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. We talk about the big giant insect, and here we go. 7-foot insect. I couldn't even imagine seeing one 7 feet long and possibly 7 feet tall stick insect.
I can't even deal with the
It's made out of redwood.
Yeah.
That's nutty.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you look at some of those walking sticks, and they are so...
camouflaged.
Yeah. And I've actually accidentally touched one once, and I just thought it was a soft spring twig. You know how during spring... when trees... And
it was like, hey.
Actually, it wiggled, and I cringed, and I just stood there.
It's like, you're hurting me.
Like, yeah. And
lasagna.
Like, good 30 seconds, I was like, I touched a bug. Yeah. But in this article, they mention an insect that does exist, the white witch moth with a wingspan of almost a foot.
Yeah, I said that.
I can't. Yeah, I know.
11.8
but
inches.
you can't imagine
Huge.
seeing a 7-foot one. I can't even imagine seeing that thing.
That moth is like as big as a chicken.
Yeah. Nope. Not
Yep.
gonna do it.
Big giant moth about the size. I wonder if it tastes like chicken. Probably tangy.
Ew. Why would you say that?
It's like a little tiny baby Mothra.
Okay, that's.
I don't know. I don't.
Kind of cute.
But I mean, there are people that still think that these like giant insects and birds and things like that do exist. I think that the thunderbird has a real possibility of just being a big ass bird, but I do think it's real to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you just mistake seeing a huge bird. And when it comes to thunderbirds, I think that, you know, being up in the sky, flying around, how often do you sit there and stare at the sky? In your everyday life, who's got the time? So why not? I mean, people say, well, how could they exist? They would be found, you could be seen. Maybe not. You know, maybe if that's part of your existence, right, is to be able to survive and thrive without being seen. You get pretty good at it over time, I would think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ew. I'm looking at photos of the white witch moth.
Gross.
It's as big as a lot of people's hands.
It's a chicken. It's as big as a chicken. Yeah, like one of those like 4 or 5 pound, or was it those chickens you get for like $5 or $6 at the grocery store?
Yeah.
You can feed like a whole family.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally edible. It's about the size of a big fat chicken nugget.
Stop.
Yeah, probably delicious. So speaking of Dogman sighting in Arkansas, this was relatively new,
Yeah.
right? This person, a roofer, means he works on roofs.
Mm-hmm.
He provided his full name and location, but asked to remain anonymous, told Cryptozoology News that he was heading back to his home after a day of work. When he came across the biped on November 15th around 4:15 p.m., He said, I came across this evil-looking wolf creature. It was carrying something in its hands like a leash or a rope.
Oh.
Gray, 7 foot tall, about 300 pounds, and he didn't have any real description of its head or facial features. He said it was standing about 2 feet on the left-hand side of the road.
Yeah.
And then, a month ago, there was a man in Colorado who had kind of a similar claim to spying a similar creature.
7 seems to be the magic number in this episode.
It's crazy. Man.
Yeah, 7 foot tall cryptid insect and now a 7 foot tall dog man.
Yep. And it's, so they say the dog man is a cryptid that's reputed to live in the northwestern quadrant of Michigan's Lower Peninsula. Maybe that's where most of the sightings have occurred for Dogman, but I mean, Dogman is supposed to be relatively seen everywhere, especially if you ascribe to the possibility of it being a werewolf.
Yeah.
And probably traveling,
Or a coyote trickster for Native American beliefs, real big in the Southwest.
And there was one report that happened in 1887.
Yeah.
2 lumberjacks who described this one, or the one that they're talking about, as having a human body with a dog's head. That's just kind of silly.
I just see that as possibly a shaman doing some sort of ritual.
Maybe.
Yeah.
A little skin walking, a little shape shifting.
Oh gosh, yeah. So.
I don't know. But that was in Michigan. 2017, a woman in Michigan also claimed to have seen a similar creature.
Yeah.
And in 2015, 3 people in Michigan reported an unidentified dog-like creature in the woods of St. Clair County. So there is lots of sightings there. And we kind of hit on this. It seems like every podcast we do, there's been a new sighting of either a winged humanoid type creature.
Or a dog man.
Like I was going to say Mothman. Like Mothman.
Yeah. Right?
And you got the dog man.
Yeah.
And then you got the flying chicken thing that we just talked about, that moth thing.
Yeah.
And then the stick bug. And then, it's just like, what's going on? And remember the last podcast, we talked about Thunderbird, right? There was like Petrosaurus being sighted and possible Thunderbird. And, one of the quotes was, it was 3 times the size of my SUV. What's going on, man?
Yeah.
Kind of nutty.
Well, that's the thing, because
the Thunderbird sighting was in Pennsylvania.
And
the pterodactyl was in Texas, I think.
Well, according to belief, Mothman is supposed to be almost like an owl and a harbinger of doom. And then similar things can be said about skinwalkers, a.k.a. dogmen, if they are the same thing or not. So if there's been this increase in these dogmen type sightings and an increase in winged cryptids, is something bad going to happen? I don't want to think that way, but I guess we should anticipate something.
Well, I mean, those sightings have been pretty much happening
regularly. Yeah.
So I don't know if anything bad's happening. I just don't know why all of a sudden there just seems to be an uptick.
Yeah.
So, or maybe it's just because we've just been paying more attention to it. I don't know. Interesting. Something to think about.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do right now is going to go ahead and take a second and take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about something I thought was super cool, kind of scary. It's called a Kokogi.
Oh.
It's a spirit monster. And it's a story about this thing infesting the First Nation reservation.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's going to be kind of cool. So you're listening to the Creep Geeks podcast. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the CreepGeeks podcast. I had to take a second to get a little bit of coffee. Okay, so this next story I thought was really interesting. It's called Kokogi, and it's a spirit monster infests First Nation reservation.
That's kind of scary.
It's very scary.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to read this to you, and it's kind of long, so bear with me.
I could do it.
You think you can?
I don't know. But this is a recent account on phantomsandmonsters.com. But it starts with this guy. He doesn't really notice where to start. He's just going to write it all down.
Technically, it's not a guy.
Yeah. Okay, person.
It's a girl. So you could read it because it is. It is a girl.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this story is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I read it a couple different times, and I was like, no way.
And a lot of the preface is that, people have told me, especially non-native friends, that she's crazy. when she casually talks about her encounter and her experience. But when she tells, native people, they're like, okay. Anyway, the story is, this all happened in the fall of 2011 when I was 16 years old. I was living in a nearby city with my mom so that I could get a better education than the one I could get back home. But we'd go back every single weekend to see my dad and my little brother. One Friday, during the drive back home, I got a text from a friend of mine. She told me about a party that was happening that night and asked me when I'd be home so they could come pick me up. I gave her a time, and that was it. We get home, and as soon as we stepped inside the house, we see my dad and my cousin sitting at the kitchen table drinking some beers. They're both cops on the res, so usually beers with his partner on a Friday evening means that they've had a particularly tough week at work. Typically, the toughest cases to deal with are child abuse and molestation, so a part of me felt sad immediately that something bad had happened. They both looked tired and drained, but they were happy to see us. We say our greetings, catch up a little, and my dad asks me if I have any plans. I tell him about the party and where it'll be, and he and our cousin shared a weird look. Why are you guys making that face? Did something happen? I asked. I don't know, should we tell her? Her cousin says, looking at my dad. He laughed, and then they decided I should probably know what's been going on since I'd be going to a cottage pretty deep in the woods later that evening. They start with the first strange call they got on Monday night. An older woman called saying that people were outside of her house knocking on all of her windows. She said she couldn't see anybody, but there must have been at least 3 people, judging by all the different locations of the knocking. They arrive at the woman's home, inspected all around the house, even checked the woods, but nothing came up. They tell her that it's probably just some teenagers playing tricks on her, and there isn't much else they can really do besides patrol around the area in case they come back. Well, on Wednesday night, the same woman called again with the same problem. It had rained that day, and there was mud all around this woman's house. So they figured that at the very least, they'd find footprints, but they couldn't find a thing. This is when they started feeling like something was off, because one of the windows where the woman was adamant about there being knocking was completely impossible to get to without stepping through this huge mud puddle. This is when they start to think that the woman was lying, but they just told her the same thing they told her last time. If it happens again, call us, we'll be patrolling the area. Well, by Thursday night, everyone on the res has been talking about these strange experiences. It turns out this woman wasn't the only one experiencing the knocking. She was just the only one to call the police. I mean, all of this was taking place on a res, so it wasn't long before people were linking it to supernatural causes. My dad was still sure it was just a group of teens pranking people, but then they got another call from the same woman for the same reason. They rushed over and were met with the same situation, except this time, the neighbor walked over looking pale as a ghost. He says, "Is it about the knocking?" They notice she's a little shaky. And, "Yeah, did you see something?" they asked him. And the man nodded and said, "You guys are going to think I'm crazy, but yeah." And he goes on to explain what he saw. He said that he'd stepped outside for a cigarette on his front porch when he heard knocking. He looked around to see where it was coming from, and when he looked to his neighbor's house, he saw it. There was a black figure standing outside the woman's door, the same one with the mud puddle I mentioned, looking into her home. He said it looked humanoid in stature, but completely made out of shadow. You could tell it was something solidish, but you couldn't make out any features on it. He stared at it, completely in shock, and watched the thing as it knocked a couple of times and then darted around the house, knocking on every single window. He said it moved too fast to be human. It was practically a blur. It went around the house a few times, then ran across the road into the tree line behind one tree in particular. The man was frozen. He was terrified, but he couldn't look away. It leaned out from behind the tree, stared directly at him with yellow eyes that reflected the light similar to a cat's. And then it smiled, showing its small but numerous pointed and sharp teeth. I almost pooped my pants, he had attempted to joke, but his voice was still shaking. Fast forward to Friday. The stories are being exchanged all over the res and about other sightings and experiences people are having, On top of multiple people experiencing the knocking, there were also quite a few sightings with everyone describing the creature in the same way. One woman was bringing her trash bin to the road when she thought she saw someone in her peripheral vision standing near the trees. She walked back up the driveway and into her home, feeling like she was being watched. Right before she was about to open her door to go back inside her home, she looked back and saw 2 reflective yellow eyes watching her from the trees. She said it was about 5 feet off the ground. Another couple was driving at night and they saw a humanoid figure standing in the middle of the road. As they got closer, they slowed down and it turned around to face them. That's when they saw the reflective yellow eyes and the sharp, pointed teeth as it smiled at them. They stopped the car, too afraid to go closer to it, until they decided to just drive past it. Being on a narrow road, they drove past it with the figure being only a few feet from the window, staring at them the whole time. So then her dad asks, "You sure you still want to go to that party?" But at that time, her friends were already pulling into the driveway. And she says, "I gave my family hugs and kisses goodbye, and they told me to be careful, but I felt fine." A common belief among Native people is that the negative energy attracts negative energy. Therefore, an evil spirit will be drawn to people with unresolved issues, traumas, and sinners, I suppose. If you're someone who is spiritual, self-aware, and basically a good person, that in itself should be protective enough. So she says, "I get to the party, and within 20 minutes, the conversation shifts towards all the paranormal experiences people are having. I'm really curious about what everyone has to say because they have stories that I haven't heard yet. But my friend, us being about 16 and all, couldn't hold her alcohol very well and was crying about how she wishes she was closer with her brother. I was trying to make her feel better while listening to everyone's stories." Now, one of the people at the party was related to the neighbor of the woman who was calling the police. The experience really shook him up, and my friend was just explaining everything that he was doing later on. For one, he smudged his entire home, which is something our people do when we're looking for extra protection against paranormal entities. He also went to visit multiple elders around the community for advice and information they had on similar happenings. What we do know about paranormal experiences on the res is that they don't happen as often as they used to. If you talk to one of our elders, they have endless stories and even more advice to give about how to protect yourself compared to, what's going on now. Now, one of the explanations that was given to this guy about the shadow thing was that it was evidence that someone was doing an unauthorized shaking tent ceremony. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up, but it's basically, and I'm generalizing here, like a Ouija board session that takes place inside of a tent of some sort. People stand around the tent while a shaman-type dude goes inside and asks questions. The tent begins to shake, and you can hear the voices of spirits coming through. I've never personally been to one because we haven't had a good enough reason to make one, but typically our ancestors used shaking tent ceremonies when they were starving in the dead of winter and needed some direction on where the nearest food source was. My mom's been to one, and her story is absolutely crazy. She described multiple voices of men and women, only speaking the native tongue, and they were upset that the people were doing a shaking tent ceremony when they weren't on the verge of death. The people there had to explain that they were only doing the ceremony to prove that it was real, as we had been losing our culture as a result of residential schools. But the spirits were angry about this, saying that the bridge between the two worlds should never be opened unless absolutely necessary, because you don't know who you're communicating with. It could be evil spirits, it could be good ones, it could be ancestors, but you never really know. Anyways, the elders told this guy that the spirit crossed over into our world because of a shaking tent ceremony. Someone on the reservation had been doing them without consultation of the elders, so we started thinking about who would do that without proper guidance and without good enough reason to. Then, of course, two of the drunkest dudes, drunk dudes, at this point start saying stuff like, "I'm not scared. That thing could show up now and it couldn't do poop," basically egging it on. As All of us were looking at each other like, why the hell would you disrespect an evil spirit? What's going on? That's exactly how you attract them, to you. And that's when we decided to leave the sunroom where everyone was hanging out. I went to the living room to console my drunk, crying friend when I noticed that the rocking chair outside on the porch was going back and forth. I looked away immediately, refusing to make direct eye contact, but I did look at it from my peripheral vision. Anyways, I'm inside the cottage. I keep seeing this rocking chair going back and forth. But another thing we're raised to do in our culture is to ignore paranormal experiences. Spirits feed on the energy that people put towards them. So if you freak out, or if you get angry, or you yell, or start crying, that's exactly what it wants, and it will stick around once it gets a reaction. It thrives on energy of any kind. So while I knew something messed up was happening on the rocking chair, I wasn't about to pay it any attention. 5 minutes or so goes by, and I'm still seeing it move in the corner of my eye. That's when my friend screams, and she runs to the other side of the sunroom. My other friends sprint towards where the girl was sitting and burst through the French doors onto the balcony. All of this happens in a split second, but I immediately go to the patio and ask what's going on. The girl is crying on the couch with friends all around her. She claims to have seen the spirit, which we later nicknamed Kokogi, Algonquin for the word monster. She said she was listening to the boys talk about the spirit when she saw the boy's face as he was looking out onto the balcony behind her. She turned around to see what he was looking at, and directly to the other side of the window was the shadow spirit sitting on the rocking chair, smiling at her, literally 3 feet from her. That's when the boy sprints towards it and busts through the French doors. I walk outside to find the boy, and he's on the lawn, staring into the woods. I call his name, and he looks up at me. All he says is, "Get everyone inside." And the tone of his voice just makes me automatically obey. I get all the drunk teenagers inside the cottage. This is when the phrase, "come at me, bro," was just gaining popularity. So you could imagine the drunk kids yelling that into the woods. It was terrible. I eventually get everyone inside, and the girl is now in a trance, freaking everyone out. She doesn't speak to anyone. She doesn't say anything, but "I want to go home." The boy comes back inside and tells everyone to clean up, that we should leave as soon as possible. Everyone has trash bags, and they're all cleaning away all the beer bottles and cans away. Everyone goes into the cottage, and it's only me and the other boy in the sunroom now. I look at him for answers, and all he says is, "It's outside." I nod, and I start cleaning faster. The sooner we're out of here, the sooner we're away from that thing. As we're cleaning the sunroom, we hear knocking on the windows in multiple places. The entire sunroom is made of glass, but it's dark out, so you can't see everything outside. I immediately look to the boy, and he just says, "Ignore it. Just ignore it." Within 2 seconds, someone comes running out of the bathroom and says, "I'll effing kill whoever's outside knocking on the bathroom window." But everyone's inside and accounted for. Someone else comes running out of the bedroom saying there's knocking on the window in there as well. Now everyone's freaking out, and me and the boy and one of our other friends are the only sober ones to calm everyone down. We get the place cleaned and get outside to the cars immediately. Everyone's getting into the trucks, and I'm standing with the boy. He's relaxed, but then all of a sudden looks behind me and shoves me inside his truck. We peel out of the driveway and drop everyone off. A few days later, I end up hanging out with the same boy, and he tells me the story from his perspective. He said that when the boy starts talking crap about the spirit, it appeared on the rocking chair behind the girl. He said he made eye contact with it and couldn't look away. They were staring each other down, and that's when the girl saw his expression. He said it was instinct to defend the people he was with and ran towards it. He said that the feeling he was getting from the Kokogi was almost like he was daring him to do something. He said the second he got up, the Kokogi stood and ran into the woods, disappearing from the patio into a blur. He ran off the porch and was looking around the lawn when he saw it standing at the tree line, looking right at him with a smile on his face. He said the whole time it felt like it was mocking him. I called the boy's name, and it disappeared. He didn't see it again until everyone was getting into the trucks, which explains why he suddenly pushed me inside. He said it was standing on the far end of the truck, super close to us. Later that night, when he'd drop everyone off, they'd realize that they never locked the door, so he went back to the cottage, but his friend, whose cottage it was too scared to go in. He goes in by himself, but the second he opens the door, he sees a thing standing inside the living room. He locks the door as quick as he can, and they peel out of the driveway. So, the sightings continued for a few days after that. They weren't the only people on the res to have those experiences, but then suddenly it just stopped. It was the talk of the res. Everyone was curious about what happened to it. Would it come back? What was it? Etc. But word ended up getting around that there were sightings north of our community. White people in the town just north of us were having sightings. Then other reservations were having sightings as well. It was like it was traveling north, the way the stories were going. Anyways, that's her story. And wow.
Yeah, cool story, huh?
Holy dang. Yeah. That's unsettling. I mean, there's a whole village, or a whole reservation.
Yeah.
And what creeps me out is, with res life, when there's a party, and it's a decent party, every one of the kids shows up.
Yep.
So if that thing had been truly malicious instead of like a trickster, possibly, which is what I'm getting from this, it could have wiped out all of the res's young kids.
Crazy.
I'm so creeped out. Oh, man.
You're listening to CreepGeeks Podcast. We'll be right back.
Shots through my chest as you watch me bleed. Every kick, drum, hit is a symphony. Every brush of your curves is the air I breathe. You speak, I am listening. Sweat rolls, girl, you're glistening. Slow-mo, pull me into the light, the light. There are people watching us, wishing they were obvious, instead of giving into the fright, the fright. Survive when one just breaks. One slow suicide while one just takes and takes. One choice for the good of you, but not the one you make. But one worth dying for if you saw her shake, shake, shake. We can feel the flow underneath our feet. I am listening. We can feel the flow.
Audible is an audio entertainment that entertains, educates, and inspires. For you, listeners of the CreepGeeks Podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/cheapgeek. Again, that's audibletrial.com/cheapgeek for your free audiobook.
I'd sell my soul to take you home. Run through the fire, out off the wire. I would sell everything I own. I'd swim the ocean, dance with the devil. I'd sell my soul to take you home.
Yeah. Super creepy, right?
That is unsettling. I don't know. It weirds me
So
out.
there you go. That's what you get when you play with a Ouija board. Or in this case, a shaking tent.
Well, because I've heard of that ceremony before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not cool.
Not cool, bro.
Not cool.
Come at me, bro. Come at me. Yeah.
Can you imagine that though? Like you're at a party or like any horror movie where the drunk person is like trying to antagonize the spirit or
Yeah.
whatever the monster is, you know?
You know, it's funny because when I was reading this story the first time I read it a while ago, I read it like twice. I'm like, this is like every scary movie you've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, a bunch of kids get together, you know, the foreshadowing something weird's going to happen. And then the kids get together and then something weird happens. And you've got like, there's always somebody having a problem. There's always somebody who's too drunk. There's always something, you know, there's always something. There's always the level-headed person, you know, there's always the hero. It's just like, I was like, is this for real? I don't know. But I thought it was a good-looking. I thought it was a good-looking story when I looked at it. I was like,
But
what?
that usually happens in
Yeah.
real life, you know? I mean, granted with teenagers.
The only thing that was missing, though, was like I was running to the truck and I slipped and fell.
Or Drew Barrymore dying. you
Yeah,
know
or
what I'm
something like
saying?
But, man, I thought that was a pretty crazy story. It's
Yeah.
like, I could just see, you know, it was freaking scary, man. Because if you were there and somebody's like, you know, the raps on the window and all that stuff, so it's like, man.
Yeah.
And then open the door and see it.
And we have
like,
spoken.
You know, I tell you what, though, if I left and they're like, oh, we got to go back, I forgot to lock the door, I'd be like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Burn that place to the ground. How about that?
Well, I mean, earlier this year we did speak to the Paranormal Rangers, and they, you know,
That's true. The Navajo Paranormal Rangers.
yeah, those guys. I mean, with the amount of distance they have to cover and all the weird things they encounter,
Yeah.
I could foresee them, you know, at some sort of place, and somebody walks in, they're like, "I'm gonna go here." They're like, "Let me tell you, if you go here, this is what's gonna happen."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, they cover those like 23,000 square miles or something like that. It's like
They basically cover the entire four corners of those states, plus I want to say a good third of Arizona.
Yeah.
And
so like
third of-
Arizona, Utah, New Mexico,
yeah.
and what's the fourth one?
Well, anything past El Moro, technically they have to cover.
Yeah.
So all the way into basically urbanized Arizona.
Yeah, and if you go
So-
back in our podcast history list, you can find the episode where we talk about the Paranormal Rangers,
Yeah.
and they're like Navajo X-Files, man. It's great.
Uh,
A couple of good people to talk to. It was fantastic.
yeah.
So, very nice. So speaking of good people to talk to, we went to an event
Yeah.
over the past week. First one here in Western North Carolina. So we decided we would go and see what it's all about.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
I was just kind of amazed that, you know, we move here and we try to get a little settled in. And then my first job, you know, for the CreepGeeks podcast is to look and see what's happening in our area. I did a simple search. Bam! Within, you know, the first 2 weeks we're here, there's an event. So I
Yeah.
said, let's go check this out. And we did. We met some really cool paranormally interested people here in Western North Carolina.
yeah, like-minded people
Yeah.
that are interested in what we're interested in. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say when I ran out of my.
Well, the people we met a lot of people, but probably,
Yeah, like five.
Hey.
I was like, man.
We did a lot of talking.
Okay,
That's
just to
what
put
we
it in
did.
perspective, we've been kind of locked down for a while we got here. You know, taking care of getting the studio ready, moving in,
And then it snowed.
doing all the stuff, and it snowed and kind of locked us in. So aside from seeing family, we haven't really seen anybody. You know, so we were like, I know, we're like, we're going out, so we're going to go out and see what's going on, right?
Going to town.
Yeah. So, and, you know, it's kind of a little bit of an adventure, but so we got there a little early because you never know what to expect, right?
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, let's go and check this out because there's a shop attached to this whole thing, and this is where the event was. And we figured, okay, we'll go and we'll kind of get an idea and see what's up, and then maybe do a little shopping. And if it's terrible, we'll just leave. But it wasn't.
No.
So it was a good time. So you can tell everybody about it if you want.
Well, oh man.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just lost my place.
See? So the event
Yeah.
that we were going to go see, excuse me, that we did see, was, what was it called?
That's what I'm trying to pull up the full name of what we went
Yeah,
to.
well, basically, it was,
Paranormal Gatherings?
yeah, it was a paranormal gathering. It was past lives and reincarnation, I think.
Yes.
I don't know why I can't remember that. I wrote it down somewhere. I just can't remember.
We took notes.
I know.
You know?
Lots of notes. And everything that we're going to talk about that particular presentation and our thoughts is coming in another episode. So we're not going to do that one.
Because it was really interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So basically, we decided that...
so tune in again if you want to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, don't say if you want to. You need to tune in so you can hear all the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we go and we go to the shop.
Paranormal Gatherings Past Lives.
That's what it was. Paranormal Gatherings Past Lives.
Yeah.
We get there a little early so you could do some shopping. You should tell them what they have in the store. It's actually a pretty neat place. It's a nice little eclectic shop.
Yes, it's an eclectic little metaphysical spirituality store. And the cool thing is, if they don't have what you need, they are more than happy to track it down, find it, and get it so you can get it. They have a really amazing selection of different herbs and resins for divination, for spiritual work and things like that. They've got a great selection of local crystals. They have some books, jewelry, incense, a lot of curios. I actually picked up a little 4-leaf clover curio because I could not put it down. I thought it was adorable. And just if you're into that eclectic scene, it's a great place to check out. You don't have to be like fully engrossed in the spirituality thing, but they have some good stuff just to improve your life. So I kind of went a little nutty in there because I haven't been in one of those shops in a while. So I was just filling up my little basket because they have a little convenient shopping basket, and just talked about how interested I was in the store. So I got a place to shop now.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So we actually met a couple people from the shop.
Mary's one of them.
Yeah. Mary. Very, very nice. Very nice. So we get there, and they were set up and ready for the event. Just a small event. It's like an informal kind of gathering with this thing. And there was like snacks.
Yeah, small event, but they got snacks for like 1,000 people.
No, you're exaggerating. Maybe 10 or 15, 20 people. But I mean, there was like I said, we didn't know what to expect. So we showed up. The shop was nice, and it felt warm and inviting, which is very cool. It had a little bit of a weird thing going on with me, but that was okay. I kept hearing whispers. I kept thinking Omi was talking to me in the store because I was in one room, she was in the other, and I kept going back saying, "What do you want? What do you?" Because it was annoying. Because I was standing there looking at her look at stuff, and then I would walk away, and then I would hear her call me or say something to me, and so I have to go back again and go, okay. And it happened like 3 or 4 times. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And you're like, "I'm not even talking to you.
Yeah,
I wasn't talking at all."
Talking at all.
I kept hearing whispers, which is unusual for me, but anyway, that passed. So, and I did talk to Mary and say, "What did this building used to be?" And she said, "It used to be like a general practitioner, like a doctor's office." And I said, "Well, I'm hearing these weird whispers, just out of earshot, just the whispers." And she's like, "A lot of people get weird vibes here." I said, "Oh, that kind of makes sense." So, anyway, got a nice little tour of the building and seen the future plans of what they're trying to do and expand, and it was good. And overall, and they do smudge the building, their office, in the store periodically.
Yeah.
So, well, that's good. And so, what this really boiled down to was a bunch of like-minded people coming to hear a person talk about paranormal and past lives, and basically an overview of reincarnation, right? And that was put on by Slim. And Slim is a member of the Asheville Cryptid Society and Fringe Investigations podcast, right?
Yeah.
And in that podcast, or I should say Asheville Cryptid Society and the podcast, is Daniel and the cryptid guy, Christian, and they all have like nicknames, right? So the cryptid guy is Christian, Daniel is Tiny, and Slim is Slim, right? So I thought it was kind of funny. And so they're all sort of together. She's given the presentation. Now, Daniel and Tess and Mary have their own paranormal and cryptid research team, if you will. It's M&D, Paranormal and Cryptid Research, right? That's what they do, LLC. And so they do investigations, and they all have certification from the, was it Warren Institute?
Joshua P. Warren.
Yeah, from Joshua P. Warren, and they are certified paranormal investigators. They're all qualified, so I thought that was pretty cool. And so Daniel and Tess and Mary, they have M&D Paranormal and Cryptid Research. They also have the store, and they were sort of putting on the event, which
Well,
Tess,
they
which
co-do.
Slim was doing. So
Yeah.
they're all sort of together as it's weird. They all sort of work together with investigations and all that sort of things. It's sort of a weird sort of, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around it, but.
The Warren Institute for Paranormal
Yeah.
Studies. And the store is actually taken care of by Mary and Tess, along with the actual owners of the store.
Yeah.
And then Mary and Tess. Mary knew Daniel. Daniel, Tess, and Mary are MND.
Right.
Tess likes to say she's the and symbol.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, Daniel and Christian, and then Christian and Daniel both met Slim, and that's how that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's a thing, and it's pretty interesting because you've got a cryptid person, right? You've got a ghost person, you've got a spiritualist, which is like woo-woo type stuff.
That's what she calls herself.
Right. And you also have ghost investigators and empathic kind of thing. It's just sort of like this whole mix. Anyway, the only person we didn't actually meet was Christian because Christian wasn't there. But everyone else was there of all of what we just said, M&D and Asheville Cryptid and, Fringe Investigations. And they all, got along fine. Everything was great. Everybody was happy. Everybody was, happy to see you. They were genuinely interested in what you had to say, and everybody was clicking along really well. It was really nice, because a lot of times, a lot of this stuff is really competitive, and people can become really sort of
turds.
Yeah. Like I'm doing my presentation, don't talk when I'm doing, that kind of, they get really sort of into it. But this was an open gathering with nice people. It was like, hey, come on in and talk to us. And we did. So we sat and we listened and we learned some things and had nice conversations with Mary and Daniel and Slim. And also a guy named Bobby was there, and he's part of the Past Lives Project.
Oh, yeah.
So he's part of Asheville Past Lives Project, and he's got a website, and it's pastlivesproject.com, .org,
Yeah.
right, where it's exploring past lives with guided meditation. So he was there because him and Slim had been exploring some
past life meditation.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was just it was a really sort of open discussion, relaxed conversation, and generally about past lives and sort of an overview of reincarnation.
Yeah, but then the talk was very engaging, and that was the cool part because we all felt very engaged and very open to ask questions or give well, what about this, or what do you think about this? It's after the talk happened where we talked a whole lot. So yeah. So we might.
And I would just like to apologize to basically Tess and Daniel.
Yeah.
If you're listening, if we kept you too late.
Yeah.
Because we didn't even realize it. And it's like midnight. Like, oh, we got to go right now. So.
And Tess looked really tired. I'm like, Greg, I'm hungry. We need to go. Because I'm like, they are wore out. We have talked them to death.
It's like, we see people. Let's go talk to people. But no, it was a good conversation. It was a good time. And I really enjoyed talking to all of them. And they're all very interesting. And it's our hopes that we'll be able to sort of collaborate with everybody. And we have some plans in the works, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And we are going to give show note links to not just M&D, but some of the people we met, as well as the shop, because I kind of want to go back.
We're going to go back.
I need more rocks.
So everyone we talk to, so Slim will put out her information for Hamadal. And we'll also put out information for the Asheville Past Lives Project.
Yeah.
And we'll also put out information for M&D Paranormal and Cryptid Research. Right?
Yeah.
We'll also put out information for the shop. And we'll also put out information for a cryptid guy, which is Christian. So if you happen to be in that particular area, if you're in Western North Carolina and you'd like to come check that out, I'm sure they would appreciate it. They did bring up that they do events like that, little gatherings and educational type things, I think once or twice a month. And as they do them more often, if we come across them and come across the information, we'll pass along to you guys if you're listening and you're local. But it was just, it was good.
It was nice because, I have probably said it too many times at the event, and I have said it a couple times on the podcast. When you go to meet like-minded people, it can be a little bit
contentious.
and kind of give me a little social anxiety because I don't know what I'm going to run into. I mean, I know my personal experience and my background. I mean, and it's not significant. I've had personal experiences, but no out there experiences. And then you run into people, you don't know if they're going to impress upon you their thoughts or if they have any particular agendas. These people, their agenda was to meet like-minded people and make some friends. So, thank you.
It was very nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And we don't want to, go into great and agonizing detail about all the conversations we had because we're hoping that there'll be things to come.
Yeah.
And maybe some collaboration somewhere along the lines. But
I will mention, though, that, the shop as well as M&D, they were featured in the local news here for the county. We'll put a link to that news article. And didn't they were at the Marion Bigfoot Festival, which is a pretty big deal. So
it is now.
Yeah. Wow, Yeah. But that's about it. And yeah, I do want to talk about the reincarnation stuff on a future episode.
Yeah. Very, very nice. So, after we went and talked to them and had a good time, we came back and we started looking at some different things and started putting some things together for this podcast. And one of the things that we came across was a UFO researcher earmarks a collection for the University of New Mexico.
Which is amazing.
And this is this is the first time I've heard of something like this.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
You don't normally hear about people saying, I'm going to leave, you guys, my entire UFO collection, to University of New Mexico, right? Because most universities be like, oh, that's great. You know what I mean? Most, I won't say all, but there are a lot of universities that don't want to be associated with anything like this. Anything paranormal, anything cryptid, anything UFO. They do not want to entertain any of it.
Well,
right? Because it's all about credibility.
And here's the thing, to kind of counter with that. University of New Mexico. Remember we talked, God, this was months ago, about the guy who discovered the Sandia man cave? And how a lot of his finds are disputed because he has that weird find in Los Lunas that has like both Bible and Hebrew and Native American writings.
Oh, yeah.
So they possess his collection. And it was so massive that they just basically own his house now, and it's a museum. So all his weird stuff, because towards the end, he started to get into Sasquatch and ancient beings. You can tour his house. So this isn't atypical of UNM to do,
right.
But it is very noteworthy.
Yeah, so David Marler collects and has been collecting UFO stuff for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And he's from where we used to live in Rio Rancho. His UFO collection, which encompasses dozens of file drawers, original newspaper fronts and files or pages, photographs, rare material from Air Force's Project Blue Book.
Whoa.
Is different that when he passes on, it has a destination.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's going to basically give it over to the University of New Mexico,
where
he hopes, and Marler, that's his name, hopes that it sees a future destination for UFO like-minded people or ufologists. Mm-hmm. So he hopes that his collection will go to them, and it'll bring in people to actually maybe look at it, use it, learn it, right?
Yeah.
Because UFO organizations come and go, but the university is going to be here, is what he said.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. So he makes his living through medical cells, like it's selling medical stuff.
Okay.
But he does, travel enough to where he's been able to use his own money and collect a substantial collection.
Wow.
Right? Foreign reports, sightings from, like, South America to USSR.
That's cool.
Global phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty funny. So and this was why I like this too, because this ties into what we talked about before. Documentarian James Fox, right?
Yeah.
And remember he was in the he talked about researched the 1964 Socorro incident, which we talked about.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So and he basically was checking out Marler's photos of a landing site of that UFO encounter.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Socorro was like right after, relatively after Roswell.
Yeah.
Supposed to be a somewhat bigger deal.
Because there were more witnesses.
Right.
Yeah. So, and the Bible has a collection of books. This is a collection of collections.
Yeah. So a dedicated UFO researcher began his hobby in 1990, right? And one of his most recent acquisitions came from a dumpster diver who yanked out a collection thrown away after the death of a collector. And among that material was correspondence signed by Lyndon Johnson and J. Edgar Hoover.
That's a pretty impressive find.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So
Yeah.
he's been able to collect some, a lot of one of a kind material, documents, newspapers, But, they were printed by the millions then, but, 100 years later, they're pretty rare, right?
Yeah.
So that's why Marlar has recently joined the 21st century. He has a Facebook page now and a GoFundMe to attract donations.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully he'll digitize all of his stuff, but that's a big job.
Wow, he's got anything from the history that began before the acclaimed Roswell incident in 1947. He talks about his favorite story being the Battle of L.A.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And then the incident in 1942 on the West Coast that had thousands of witnesses. But he's also got Farmington, New Mexico in his collection because 1/3 of the town,
and that was the other one we talked about was Farmington. Farmington and Socorro.
Because Farmington's got that weird sighting just outside that they tried to say was a hoax, and now it's possibly not a hoax.
Yeah, and that one was actually closer to Roswell time frame.
Yeah, so
that was like in 1950.
And here's the thing about his collection. I'm moving down into the article a little bit further. Give him a few minutes, and all of a sudden he just pulls out this super yellowed newspaper clipping from like the late 19th century, or something from the Scientific American from 1882 with like short stories about two black triangular notches seen passing the surface of the moon, disc-shaped UFOs, and that's just give me a minute in my collection. I'll pull something out you've never
seen.
See
the two triangular black notches, that's pretty interesting to me.
Yeah.
Especially if you've ever seen a big triangle craft, a black triangle.
And then
some of them have notches and some of them don't, so it makes you wonder what's over there. Maybe the Chinese will find out. If they're on the dark side of the moon, right?
Well, here's the thing. He's quick to point out these triangular-shaped reports were coming out long before the country's first stealth fighter jets.
Yep.
So, yeah. And I can't believe that. That's just so much stuff.
He occasionally does presentations, and he's booked for a presentation in Nova Scotia in 2020.
He's soon writing another book,
traveling
for his full-time job, and being consulted by his fiancée about their May 2019 nuptials. Congratulations, dude. But that's another thing about New Mexico. He's like, I'm burning the candle at three ends if that's possible. People hustle out there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, some people do.
Yeah. I will say that. So. Good on him. I mean, it's nice that he's donating it to UNM, which is an established, very recognized college in the Southwest. I'm just curious why he didn't reach out to the Paranormal Library of Roswell.
Well, I know why, because
it wouldn't be taken seriously.
Well, I mean, you've been there, we've been there.
Yeah.
And it's a nice place.
Yeah.
For what it is.
The library,
but this is the University of New Mexico.
Yeah. The library is impressive, though.
It is, but it's okay. In the sphere of credibility.
Yeah.
Okay. You have the UFO Paranormal Research Museum with a library, or the University of New Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah.
One is privately operated, right? Donations, that sort of thing keeps it afloat. And the other one is the university. State funding, all of that sort of thing. And it's like he says in the beginning, UFO sort of like paranormal teams, or not paranormal, but
I know, it's just
the university is going to be there for a long time.
The Roswell Library holds
a lot of UFO, UFO researchers and teams come and go.
The Roswell, I know, I understand. It's just for me, the Roswell Library does hold a soft spot in my heart. When I perused that library, it was funny because I pulled a book out on one of the shelves just at random, and that book was an out-of-print book that I haven't seen since I was like 15 at the Edgar Cayce Library. And it's funny because when I was 15, it was an out-of-print book. So to see it at Roswell, it was just, oh, they really do hold on to all this arcane, Fortean, just weird stuff.
Yeah, but it's not a university, man.
I know.
I'm telling you.
So, okay.
So. And the first time I went to the UFO Paranormal Museum, most of it wasn't done.
Oh.
Had like boards for the floor.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. It kind of is what it is, but I thought that was pretty interesting. You know, when you showed me that, where like dude's giving his entire UFO collection when he passes on to the University of New Mexico, and I'm like, wow. But what it doesn't say is that are they going to accept it? You know?
Yeah.
Which I hope so, because it says it will be handed off to the University of New Mexico. So, but you know, there is starting to become a trend, I think, where maybe in the next couple, 3 or 4 years, you'll find that a lot of these universities and colleges and stuff are going to open the door to UFO stuff and paranormal stuff and parapsychology.
Yeah.
Right? Paranormal studies, if you will. So maybe it'll become one of those things where it'll actually be an accredited, for real sort of, you know, degree program.
Recognized career path.
Yeah. Recognized and accredited, you know, aside from like becoming ordained, but like being, you know, having a real,
you know,
like bachelor's degree.
Where if you're at a job interview and they see, oh, it looks like you took 5 classes on UFOs, they're not going to laugh afterwards.
They go, oh,
you know?
so you have a degree in parapsychology from University of New Mexico.
Yeah, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Or University of, you know, whatever, UNCA or whatever.
Well, like Socorro wanted to offer some sort of weird degree. Not weird, but, it was cryptozoology.
Yeah.
Socorro was considering that.
But wasn't that through the Grand Canyon University?
I think so, yeah.
So you could, you know, be ordained?
Yeah.
I don't know, kind of a weird thing. We've been kind of looking into it to kind of see if there's things for accreditation and stuff like that. So,
yeah,
you know, doing that research and then coming across this article I thought was pretty funny. You know, it was sort of nebulous, but then it becomes sort of clear. You're like, what? You know, the vagaries of let me get certified, let me find what degree programs and stuff, if any of that stuff exists, accreditation, and then boom, we come across this article where this guy's giving all this stuff to UNM, where we just left. So, kind of weird, huh?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. What?
No, nothing.
Why do you keep Why do you keep looking at me? Stop looking at me. See, you can't help it. You gotta look at me. Right? So, it's like I see you in my peripheral, like that shadow guy beating on all the doors.
Yes.
Kokogi.
I'm not smiling my yellow fangs at you. So
gross.
I know. Yuck.
Yeah, so we had glowing yellow eyes and big yellow buck teeth. So it's a rabbit. All right, so I think we've gone a little too long with this podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, why, you got something else?
No, the only thing I did want to mention is that the CreepGeeks Teespring store still has that promo code going on. We'll put a link in the show notes, but that's going to be teespring.com/stores/CreepGeeks-podcast-store, or just click on the link in the show notes for the podcast.
Yes.
We have that promo code right now, Xmas Rush, for 25% off your order.
So there you go.
Yep.
So if you want to buy something with a little logo on it, it's got the cool Bigfoot and UFO and all that stuff all in one shot. Very nice.
I will say the green hoodie is very festive for the holiday season.
Oh, that's right.
And I like it more than the gray hoodie, which is weird because if you know me, everything I wear is gray or teal. So
yeah, I do like the green hoodie. I need to get that.
Yeah.
So. My dad's got it. Looks great on him.
Yeah.
He wears that thing, rocks it. It's like, here we go. Thought that was kind of funny. So. Very nice. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up.
All right.
So
everything you guys need for this podcast episode will be in the show notes. We provide all links. Again, if you need to comment about the show or reach out to us, that's going to be contact@creepgeeks.com. You can also reach us individually, greg@creepgeeks.com or omi @creepgeeks.com. Business inquiries, it's going to be contact@creepgeeks.com. Just put in the subject line, what you doing, what's up. Be sure to join us on social media. So like that Facebook page, Creep Geeks Podcast, join the Facebook group, Creep Geeks Facebook group, or subscribe to us on YouTube. Click the little bell to get notifications every time we do a live show. And that's it.
very nice. So I'd just like to say thanks to everybody who listens and pays attention and follows along. And we're going to resurrect the live streams. I think we just about have I think we got it figured out what we need to do to make that happen. So it'll be a wonderful time. So be sure to join us again Sunday.
Yeah.
Because we try to do this every Sunday. And for those of you who listen to the audio podcast, very much appreciated. We're well over 10,000 downloads. It's very, very nice.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
So much.
Yes, indeed. So any questions, comments, concerns, let us know. But yeah, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. So, see you later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Peanut butter.